Welcome to the Mavericks podcast. In today's episode, we are joined by Jacob Robinett. Today, we are learning about his path towards his faith and providing some insight into different struggles along the way. Remember, you are not in your struggles alone. Enjoy the show. Welcome back, everybody. This is our fourth episode. Today, I'm joined here with Jacob Robinett. It's good to see you.
It's a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Sir. It's good to have you on.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to be here and asking me to do this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I saw you at church the other day, or 2 weeks ago, I think, and for some reason, I walked over to you, and that was the same time that lady, I think. No, that was a different time. But whenever I asked you, or we went out to lunch that day, didn't we?
I think that was last Sunday, I believe.
Okay, so that was last Sunday. So that was a different time then.
Yeah.
But I figured, you know what? Could be a fun experience to have you on here. So
I appreciate it.
you like to ask questions, and you're also, in my opinion, more versed in the Bible than me. So I figured it'd be a good conversation.
Absolutely.
What I want to start with today is kind of what brought you to your faith.
Absolutely. So for me growing up, I think I was baptized at 2. I think went to the Presbyterian, my parents. And we would go like Sundays every once in a while when I grew up a little bit. But like it wasn't really it wasn't anything very consistent. And I accepted Christ in my life when I was 10. And I'm like, this is great. But my understanding of it at the time and for a good while growing up was Jesus died for our sins and he saved us because we were sinners. And I'm like, that's great. But from then, especially just having very limited life experience and just not getting confirmation about some things, like, all right, we have this. Where do I go about it? How do I do this? Like,
How do you do what?
How do I follow Christ faithfully now that I know that I am saved?
Okay.
And it just, from then on, I was 12. I was able to start youth group. That's where a consistency started for me. I never really went to church on Sundays, very rarely through middle school and high school. It was always youth group. It was very rare for me to miss Wednesdays unless like some school event or something. And it was cool. I still try to reach out to some of my old youth pastors. Some are even still there. It's crazy. We're in the same young adults together, and where we have young adults is where I started youth group. So I've been going into the same room for half my life, which is crazy. And it's so cool. I've just seen it change so much. And now I don't know how many viewers we'll have, but I'm on the worship team for young adults, and I actually just got accepted being the worship team for our Sundays. And we go to, I don't know if you talk about where you go to church or anything like that.
A little bit.
A little bit. We go to Hill Country Fellowship, Myrna, Texas. And it's a big church, and honestly, I'm kind of nervous about it, but I think it's going to be really good. The team's really cool. The head worship leader, Josh, is awesome. And I'm so excited to grow in that because I love singing.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think it'd be a good experience for you and a good step in what you might call the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and as far as ups and downs in your faith, what were some of the low points so that we can kind of establish a place where some people, because everyone gets lost, and a lot of people have gotten lost and they've strayed off the path and they've gone away from it.
Absolutely.
And maybe even felt like it wasn't even a thing that they could or they should believe in, and kind of strayed away and decided to go about their own ways and make their own path, right? Without God and the presence of God in their lives actively.
Absolutely.
So, what were some of the low points in your life, you would say?
One thing I just wanted to clarify, we were talking about before we started recording, is a lot of people talk about the highs and lows, and I just wanted to clarify. I'm not talking about circumstances, like life circumstances that are out of your control. That's life. What is important is how you attack them and what you make of them. You can be at a very high point where you're just being so faithful and you're communicating with God all the time, and you're doing what He asks, doing things like that. And then the lows that you're talking about is just you have all this anxiety and guilt and shame and just falling to all these your struggles, maybe vices or these sins that you struggle with. And mine, I have a few points in my life. Um, I was talking to you earlier about uh, when it was something I struggled from high school even to now. I'd say not now as much anymore because having community has made such a big difference. But just I wanted to do the right thing, and what I really wanted to pursue in my life is be a man of God. That's what I want. Not only do I know it's right, it's what I want. And I knew there was going to be sacrifice with that. And some things, like, I was too afraid to tell people about it, or like people would think of me, or I didn't want to give up some things. I didn't want to give up, like, I didn't have necessarily very many vices, but more just like, I don't know, lustful kind of thoughts. And like, I still wanted to lean into that, but I knew as I grew older that um, that one, having this lustful like mindset and looking at women isn't going to line up with what God says. So like, how do you get out of that mindset? But I would say my lowest points was definitely in college. Even though I had a much more greater understanding of what it meant to follow Christ, which blows my mind that blows my mind that I struggle with that. Because I got to school and kind of just went with the flow. Something very dangerous, by the way. Going with the flow is a terrible idea. Just want to put that out there. There's a reason that we have this book, and that wouldn't necessarily want to call it rules, because that's not why we do it. It's not like
It's more of a guidance to what. It's more of a guidance to the possibility of what you could be if you were at your greatest.
Absolutely.
We'll put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of just, it's when I started to, it's when I started drinking. And it wasn't, I never became an alcoholic per se or anything, but I had more issues with like isolating myself, have very low self-esteem, and still at times I do. That was something I was having a hard time with last night, matter of fact. And just would get in a bad way, and would isolate myself in my room because I didn't have a roommate most of the time, and would just close myself off to everything. It would affect my relationships, whether that's with women or like family or friends, and affect my school and just my whole outlook on life. And I would forget like why I'm here and why I do the things I do. I just get so caught up in my feelings and just beat myself up so bad. And that continued all through school. I cared so much what people thought. And I just kind of went with what everybody else did. And if I didn't feel like it, I would close myself off in my room. And then I came back here. I took a year off of school. And for a while, I was doing great in regards to life. I had a steady job, paying my own bills, got in my own house. Like, it was all going great. And then I got into a relationship, my first like real relationship. And I lost my virginity to this girl when I was 21 years old. And that grew with, I learned later about soul ties, and the attachments were there very much. And it was it was such an unhealthy relationship. I've never been one to like have breakdowns or stuff, but I wanted to have like a mental breakdown. Like, it was awful.
During it or after it?
Daring. I just didn't, like, it was just so much going on. Just had a very bad view of herself, and just would tell me things like, don't tell me if you're feeling sad because I'm sad all the time. So like pretty much had to hide my feelings.
Right. Which isn't a good thing.
No, and
In
then
general.
it just made me angry all the time.
Yeah.
Which I'm usually, I mean, I feel like you've talked to me enough that I don't come off as like an angry person.
No, you don't.
So that was tough. And then everybody in my life is like, you got to break up with this girl. You got to break up with this girl. I'm like, man, it doesn't feel right to break up with this girl just because y'all are telling me to.
Mm-hmm.
The only way I know for sure that I want to is if God tells me to. Because even before I had an understanding, we were talking about motives, and we might get onto that later, I'm sure. And be like, if I just did this because everybody else did, or because I cared about what others thought, I'm not doing it for the right reasons.
Do you think that maybe you were voluntarily blinding yourself to what God could have been telling you at that point, or do you think?
Oh, probably. But that's why, at the time, I reached out to 3 people, 2 my old youth pastors, and a friend of mine that is super somebody I look up to in their faith and like what it looks like. Because he's young. He's only like a year older than me. I'm only 22, and I was younger at the time, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's hard to, you don't see very many people at our age that are trying to pursue being faithful in a relationship with God in everything they do. Right. It's really hard to find.
Oh,
yeah. It has been for me, especially like going to college and everything else. It's really easy to just get caught up in life. And I asked them, like, I didn't just want to hear what I necessarily wanted to hear, or I didn't know what I wanted to hear, to be honest, but I wanted to get like good godly advice. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to one in particular, is actually Kevin, the youth pastor you met last week.
Yeah.
I was talking to him, like, man, how do I know God's speaking to me? It's like, hold on, man, let me give you a call right back. And I was waiting on him, and I happened to look at my Bible app and look at my verse of the day, and I wish I could remember what verse it was. I couldn't tell you to save my life, but I know what God told me when I read that. He's like, you will not be a man of God if you stay with this woman. And so I broke up with her. And like towards the tail end of that relationship is when they started this young adults group that we go to. Mm-hmm. And I went to like the kickoff party, and I was so excited, but like she had a kid, and like I was afraid of like I wanted to help her out with that, and afraid of like what she thought or whatever. And so I didn't go until after we broke up. I started to go consistently on Tuesdays when I could. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time I heard of the idea of community and how important that was. Because I'm like, I always wondered, like, how am I going to grow in my faith and be faithful by myself? Because that's what I tried to do, and I was very unsuccessful.
Yeah, I've learned more and more recently how much of an importance community plays in everything. And there's a small subject that I'll touch on a little bit later about it, and it's about people being in the same mindset when they're together, kind of like in a church community, or you can go the opposite way and say even in a devilish, cultish community. Mm-hmm. Kind of relating to the more people that are there that share the same outward interests, like they're normal people on the street, but when they're all meeting up and they all have that kind of 10% of the evil or the good, mm-hmm. and more people start to show it, then you're multiplying whatever spirit it would be there at the time. So if it's, a godly spirit, then a godly spirit shows, or if there's a devilish spirit, the devilish spirit starts to show. 100%. And you can use that in different other contexts too. But so that's something that I will definitely get into later. That is a thing that interests me actually. But you can continue.
Yeah, and after I started going there consistently, that's when I started growing my relationship like crazy. Like I started gaining understanding of like what it looks like, something simple like how to have like a productive prayer, mm-hmm. like what it would look like where not just like God answer your prayers and like oh God, I want to win the lottery, and not stuff like that, but like that's when I gained the understanding of like He's also our Father. And like he wants to talk to us just like our own dads,
Mm-hmm.
or just people we see as family, because I know not everybody does. I'm fortunate enough that I do. And so I just talked to him like a dad, and then learned what he had in store for me, and like what I need to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the whole summer was consistent in that. And then I decided to go back to school. Went there for a year, and I was pretty consistent towards throughout most of the first semester, like reaching out to my friends back home, like even found a Bible study while I was over there, and like trying to find good friends, because I knew you would become who you surround yourself with, exactly in the part like you will bring a spirit around, like depending on like the atmosphere and like what you're talking about and the things that you do. And then I fell for the same trick I did last time. I met a girl, same place, matter of fact. I met the last one where I was at last night. But anyhow, just I'm so it still irritates me, because I had a bad feeling not long after I started talking to her at all. I'm like, this isn't gonna lead to anything good.
Mm-hmm.
And I was right. Just the people she surrounded herself with, and like she wasn't a godly girl at all, and she didn't really have any understanding or want any understanding.
So, what drew you to that relationship? If you saw that there was a bad feeling about it, and that there probably wasn't going to be anything good about it that come out of it, so what kind of drew you to ignore that instinct and continue to follow with it?
Oh, two things: that she walked up to me first, I thought she was attractive, and well, I guess three things. And I was afraid of being alone. I don't want to be, I didn't want to be single for the rest of my life, even though we're young.
Right.
And like I know I have plenty to offer, just like what if I can't get anybody else?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something that I think about.
So you're kind of talking down to yourself a little bit.
Oh yeah, low self-esteem kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we just more I started talking to her, and it kind of just started going with the flow again.
Mm-hmm.
Started reverting back to the man that I was, and just accept that I had an understanding this time. The difference was I had an understanding this time that pursuing God, it's either all or nothing.
Right.
Pretty much. Either have to, like, obviously not the sense of like being perfect, doing everything right, but you're actively pursuing in your relationship, and you're furthering your growth and being faithful. And I knew in this relationship I couldn't do that. So I knew I either had to decide to end things with her or end things with God. And, or like at least with like a relationship type and being consistent. Because of course I still believed, but anybody can believe. I mean.
So there's not a connection, but the word belief, a lot of people use it very loosely.
Yeah.
And it's not actually what it means.
Okay.
To believe in something is to, dedicate one's life.
Okay. Or maybe
to the enactment of that belief. So
okay.
like if you believe in God and you believe in those purposes, and this is something that a lot of people get mixed up,
okay.
then it doesn't necessarily mean that, you think they exist, you have a sort of belief that they do exist, so you enact kind of on the assumption that they do exist, or that you know that they exist, quote unquote, whatever faith brings you, right?
But it's more on the part of dedication.
So you can believe that they exist, but belief in God and belief about God are two different things, because you could believe that they exist, and you can have faith in the wrong context, but that they exist. But to believe in God is to completely enact upon that belief that God is real, and that is to chase whatever purpose He has for you, or to chase His word and to chase that truth.
And that reminds me of something that stuck with me from something my very best friend told me, and it's so funny because he's not a believer at all. And it's again kind of that same notion, like It's not that he doesn't believe God exists or anything like that, but he's just not a believer and he doesn't pursue it. And that's a whole nother subject. But I remember he's told me this several times, and it's just something I don't think will ever leave my head. He's like, man, no matter what anybody thinks, no matter what anybody tells you, if you want to be a true man, stick with what you believe in, no matter what anybody thinks, and follow through. And that's pretty much the whole idea of what he said. Like, man, golly, you're smart. I wish you'd become a believer, bro. But just that's something that's been super encouraging to me and like would convict me every once in a while. Like when I feel like I've kind of strayed off in my lows. And again, I just kind of stayed in this relationship for a while. And what's funny, my favorite memory throughout that whole relationship had nothing to do with her. I went to her friend's wedding, and the groom, I sat on a table with some of his friends from like his Bible study, and like it was the first time that I like genuinely talked about God in a while, and like I was so excited talking to him about it. Like, man, I've been doing all this stuff with this girl and like has nothing to do with God at all. Yet I'm way more excited talking to these guys than I ever was hanging out with her. It's like, what am I doing? And I still stuck to what I was doing with her anyways. Like, bro, what are you doing? And it took, I don't know, maybe it was like a month later. She cheated on me, and that's what pushed me to end things with her. And then I was still at school, and I was thinking again, like, oh, I need to get back. I need to get back to where I was, because this is a good thing for me. And again, that's the thing with the motives. So I'm just trying to do it for my benefit. It's not gonna.
So what was a good thing for you? Getting back into Christ, or
Yes. Yeah, sorry, I didn't clarify that. Getting back into my faith and being consistent, and growing my relationship with God again. So I went with my old roommate to church a couple of times, and and would think about it, talk about it with my friends. But then I got sad because I didn't stop talking to her for like a month, and I started drinking way more. At that point, for just a little bit, it was more like an alcoholic kind of tendencies, because I was like using it as vice and drowning away like the pain and everything. But then I got to a point where I'm like, why am I letting this girl that cheated on me dictate my life?
Yeah.
Like, bro, you broke up with her. Like, it's gonna be fine. Then I started going out a bunch, and I found karaoke because I love singing. There's in the town I was in, they had karaoke every night somewhere. So I started going like 4 or 5 times a week, and I loved validation, and people liked hearing me sing. And I would drink pretty well every night, but it wasn't for the reason of like sadness or anything. It just happened to be there, and like I wanted to give them business. There was times that I was a little sad, but that wasn't why I went. They didn't have karaoke. Like I would have just gone somewhere else and found another place to sing. So did all that, and throughout that entire time, because I had a greater understanding of what it meant to be in a relationship with God, I hated myself. I hated who I'd become, and like turned my back, and it was groan and guilt and shame and condemning myself. Like I didn't believe, even though I know I didn't deserve it anyways, like I don't think I should go back, because it wouldn't be right.
Go back to what?
Go back to being faithful. I didn't deserve to be saved.
So you didn't feel like at that point that you should go back and start pursuing again?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's funny, my roommate now, him reaching out to me a couple weeks before the semester ended, he called me and just asked me how I was doing. And I've known him for a while, and he's somebody that struggled back and forth with his faith too. And at that point, he was so on fire and consistent. I could just hear it in his voice. Like I could tell there was a fire lit out in the room. Like, man, seeing this guy that I've just seen fall into all sorts of stuff. trying to pursue and do what I was doing, and maybe even furthering what I did, and what others do in our life. I'm like, wow, bro, that's so cool. But I was going to go back to work after I got home, and I worked a job on the road, and or at least that was the plan. Be like, man, I just feel so bad. I don't really want to go back to my young adults group. I don't want to be around community because I don't want to talk to them about like what I've been going through. I hadn't really talked to them throughout the semester, and just I was not in a good place in my head or in my heart, and I didn't want to confront it. And it's funny, I got a call from my work like, hey, we don't have room for you on the road, so we're going to put you in the yard. Being in the yard means I'm going to come home every night. Be like, I'm not the kind of person to just ignore them because even though I'm right there. I had an excuse, like I'm out of town. I didn't have that excuse anymore. So it was pretty much like God telling me, you're going to talk to these people, you're going to confront these things, and you're going to like it. I'm like, okay. And I started going to young adults again, and kind of talked with some guys that are close with, like what I've been going through, like where my heart was, and
This was
what I've been
relatively
struggling
recently,
with.
right?
Very recently, this beginning of the summer.
Okay.
So it was just a few months back. And I was just telling where I'd been, and they didn't condemn me. They didn't think any less of me. And pretty much it was a reminder. I kind of felt like the prodigal son, because something that I prayed for, even throughout all those dumb things that I did, I always just asked God to not give up on me, because I didn't want to give up, but I was just so afraid and was so in my head. And I went back to community, and I wasn't given up on, even by them, even though all the things I decided to do.
Yeah.
And then I realized, bro, what am I doing? I have all this here. And it's just, I'm so thankful for what I have, the friends that I have, the understanding that I have, and the tools that I have to grow further. And I don't want to give that up or think that it's worth giving up.
Right.
I don't want